Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining tonight's public information meeting. My name is Greg Newman. I'm the manager of planning with the City of White Rock, and it's my pleasure to start our meeting for tonight. I see we have about 12 people in the digital audience, so I'm going to get things started. So tonight's public information meeting relates to a zoning bylaw amendment and a major development permit at 1453 Stayte Road. The purpose of tonight's meeting is just to raise awareness of the proposal and for you to have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. We are open, obviously, to receiving comments and questions throughout the evening. We will eventually get to a point where we're going to publish all the comments that we're receiving and do our best to respond to those comments. It is a live event. It's being supported by city staff, but is being presented by the applicant, being Atelier Pacific Architecture, Inc. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the city's webpage. If you go to the City of White Rock webpage, it's whiterockcity.ca. You go to the search bar, you can even see a YouTube icon in the front. So if you wanted to watch the meeting, or if you know of someone that's not able to join tonight that may want to watch the meeting, you can direct them to the City of White Rock's YouTube page. When we do get to the Q&A section, we see all the comments and questions as they come in. If any of the comments or questions are not appropriate or offensive, we won't publish them. If there are comments expressing non-support for the project, we will certainly publish those, as well as all the questions and comments that relate to the application. Additional comments or questions that you have can certainly be sent to me by email. My email's on the screen there. As well, we have an online digital feedback form that I see we have, again, 13 attendees in the meeting tonight. At this moment, please take the time to complete those feedback forms. All the comments that we receive regarding the application, including those that we've received to date, will be part of a future report to council, and it is a good opportunity for you to express, as I say, your support or non-support for the project. So just to give everyone reference, I think most people in the room are probably familiar with the property, but the subject property is located just off of Stayte Road. It's currently vacant. You can see it there highlighted in blue. The project, and there's a bit of history to the proposal. There was previously a 4-story apartment style building proposed on the site with, I believe, about 49 dwelling units. The proposal required a zoning amendment, which was ultimately not supported by council, and I believe the applicants will go through those the specifics of that project in more detail. The application now is for a 23-unit townhome development with 2 parking spaces per unit, plus 3 visitor spaces. Just as a quick snapshot of some of the details, the subject property is within the Urban Neighbourhood land use designation, the official community plan. Within that designation, the OCP, or our official community plan, recognizes low-rise apartment-style buildings as well as townhomes. It also recognizes density of up to 1.5 FAR, or floor area ratio, in buildings up to 4 stories in height. The current zoning of the property is 1-unit residential, or RS1, and the rezoning application would create a property-specific comprehensive development zone. In addition to the rezoning, the project is subject to a major development permit, which requires that consideration be given to the applicable development permit area guidelines, which help to regulate the form and character of the project overall. This image just gives you an indication of where the property is, again off of Stayte Road, north of Thrift Avenue and south of Russell Avenue, and you can see it's illustrated there in black, but underneath the black is actually the yellow land use designation, which is the Urban Neighbourhood land use designation, the official community plan. So the designation is really intended to support a higher density forms of housing than what you might see around the periphery and the lower profile mature neighborhoods that are more characteristically comprised of single detached homes. So with that brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to the architect team to go through their presentation. So Brian, if you want to share your screen, I'll push it out to the audience.
Okay. Can you see that, Greg?
No, I'm not seeing the share.
I can see it.
Can you see that?
No, in the bottom, if you click the share screen option, then select whichever screen you have your PDF on, I can then push it live. I just don't have the option, it's not showing up.
Okay. We have a shared desktop icon. Is that the one? Okay.
So at the bottom of your screen, you should see a share option.
Okay.
There you go. Okay.
You got it?
Yeah, so you're now sharing your screen.
Okay.
You want to maybe just do full view, presentation mode.
View.
There you go, full screen mode.
Is that okay?
Thank you. I'm going to mute my microphone.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We have representatives from the Van Home Properties, the developer and applicant, as well as Gloria and myself from Atelier Pacific Architecture, and Travis Martin from Landscape Architectural Company. Let me go to the next slide. There's the next slide. Okay. So this slide is just showing the previous application as well as the current, and just a comparable between the two. The previous application, as was mentioned by Greg, was a 4-story condo building with a parkade, underground parkade with an entrance off of Stayte Road. It was an L-shaped building with an outdoor courtyard green space in the southwest corner. The project height was 4 stories, 45.5 feet, measured from lowest grade. That compares to the current proposal of townhouses, which is a 3-story element of 33.8 feet. And then there's a rooftop deck that's proposed for each of the units. So there's a stairwell that goes to the top, and the height of that is 39.5 feet. There are 50 units proposed for the condo building, and the unit density is now dropped down to 29 from 62.7 down to 23 townhouse units. The townhouse units are all side-by-side garages as well, and we're also proposing three visitor parking spots. The floor space ratio, as mentioned before, was allowable was 1.5. The original project was 1.41. The current proposal with the townhouse is under 1. It's 0.96, and it's a differential of about 1,400 square meters in buildable area. The site coverage is pretty much the same for the two townhouses. Generally fill more of the site, as opposed to an apartment building, which is more stories, so you end up with a larger ground plane that's open. The common outdoor amenity space that we provided in the condo building is quite a bit bigger. It was 12,200 square feet, and that's been reduced down to 460 feet. What we've done in addition to that is provide private rooftop gardens or rooftop decks on each of the units. So that's augmenting that amount of usable outdoor space. The indoor common amenity space is not a requirement for townhouse projects, so it's not applicable for this one. The previous one had about 600 square feet. This was an option we did after the application, and in response to some of the concerns of the neighbors to the west. We did have rooftop decks on all the blocks, but we're proposing that we move the rooftop decks for block 3 back towards the east, so that kind of reduces the visual, or sorry, the sound impact of the neighbors as well. The stairwells actually act as a bit of a block to sound. And this is just a quick site section showing what's happening with the site grades and the building mass. They are 3-story townhouses with the one element, which is the stairwell to access the roof deck above for exiting. And at the property line, there's an existing hedge on the property to the west, and our proposal actually augments that with the fence and an additional hedge. Just a quick shadow study showing the times and dates. You know, there was some concern about possible shadowing for this project to the neighbors to the west. I think most of the shadows that you're going to see in the mornings are probably in the, you can see in March 21st. It hits that hedge in a bit of the backyard, but because they're 3-story buildings, they generally don't go that far. Here's one in December, which is generally the lowest point where the sun is coming around the sky, and you can see the shadow effect in December 21st in the morning. This is just to indicate the color schemes. There's 2 color schemes that are proposed, and so blocks 1 and 3 have a color scheme 1, which is more of a kind of a natural wood tone color scheme, and then blocks 2 and 4, which have the blue scheme. And this is the color scheme 1. All the materials are cementitious board and painted, so they're quite durable finish, non-combustible, and can be painted to any color scheme. The massing you can see is 3 stories. You can see the, say for example, in the west elevation, the garage doors, and then the 2 livable levels on top of that, plus the rooftop decks. There's a bit of a trellis element as well. And this is the scheme, color scheme 2, using blues and grays. There's primarily 3 color bodies of color with some trim colors added to that. This was actually a 3-story project with a roof deck that we did in the city of Langley. We did 2 phases in one project, and this is an additional one. It's a 3-story scheme. The first level is the garage, the tandem garage in this case, and then the second level is the living functions, the living room, dining room, kitchen, and a powder room, and stairs, and then the bedrooms on top, and then a stairwell that gets up onto the roof deck above. And this was another image from the street, as well as an artist rendering of what the intent of the roof deck was for. It provides them with a private and semi-private usable space that's secure for the individual units. This is a streetscape from Stayte Road. The existing streetscape is on the top. It was treated quite heavily. The streetscape on the bottom is showing the townhouse units, and then the image of the crossing onto the site you can see in the background. There was a set of internal trees that would have to be removed to accommodate the development, and so you can actually see the house and the hedging back at the property line between the buildings here. And I'll turn it over to Travis to talk a little bit about the landscaping.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for the introduction. I'll talk generally about it. As it was mentioned, we've adjusted this design quite heavily to bring it much more into scale with the neighborhood. So they're 3-story townhomes. The townhomes face Stayte Road, so there's 5 units facing Stayte Road here. And then they're also facing a walkway along the north against that north commercial there. And then there's 2 that are inward facing on an internal walkway system that you can see down the middle there. So these houses, yeah, they're against the commercial to the north. They're really sitting back from the west lot line to give a bit more breathing space to the duplexes along that west property line. And then there's quite a bit of space on the south to the larger 3-story residential, as there's a parking space out there as well. Yep. So each unit is ground oriented and they each have private space on the rooftops. In terms of planting, we're using a mix of trees, beech, acer, maple, cedars, and pine trees, and magnolia, kind of mixed throughout the project. There is an outdoor amenity space in the northwest corner that's linked along that connecting pathway. It focuses on just a small social gathering space and mostly a space for toddler play, a small playhouse and sandbox. And it's a very well-oriented space. It's facing south and west, so it'll get sun from late morning through the afternoon. And so it'll be a very comfortable place to spend time. As you can see, there's also a number of visitor parking spaces throughout the project, used along the edges to help provide a bit more buffer to the property line, and then along those as well, a number of trees, conifer trees, along the property line edges. And as well along the edges, we're planting a number of hedges to both provide a nice green edge along the inside and also to grow up and develop as the project matures. You can see this little cross section here in the bottom right corner. That looks at the internal walkway. So that's a typical situation of these front doors and balconies as people walk along to their units and enter in. And I think that covers the landscape so far until we receive any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Travis. I'll just jump back in. Brian, did your team have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think not.
Okay. So I'm just going to jump back in and share my screen. So we'll open up the floor at this point to questions and comments. Hopefully everyone has an easily sort of identifiable caption box in the top right of their screen where they can click that to offer comments and questions. I have published one comment, just there's an acknowledgement that the project is better now than it was before. It fits the neighborhood better. They like the fact that the density is more suited for the neighborhood. So I'm going to start to publish the comments and questions as they come in, and then I'll refer them to the architect or landscape architect based on the nature of the question, or I'll try to address it myself on behalf of the city. As I mentioned earlier, if say we don't properly address your question or comment, or if something comes to mind after the meeting, or just if you wish to offer your comments more formally, there is a digital feedback form available on within the calendar details to this event. So if you go to whiterockcity.ca/calendar, and then you look at the December 9th event date, you can find tonight's event details, and within there is a digital feedback form. If you have any trouble navigating the site, you can also send me an email, and I'm happy to kind of put you, link you to the form itself. We would be looking for comments essentially 2 weeks from Friday, which puts us on Christmas Day. So if you could try to get comments before then, that would be great. So I'm going to start to publish comments and questions, and we can collectively try to respond to them. So first comment says, if this is approved, there should be barriers to any rooftop deck to the west and south sides, so privacy of duplexes and condo are not impacted, so they're not looking down on neighbors to the south and west. Did anyone from the architect team want to speak to that?
Show that image.
I'll just put the site, I'm going to put the site plan back on just for ease of reference, and maybe just to save us swapping between sharing screens. Brian, if there's a page you want me to go to, just let me know.
Yeah, it's just the DP 0.1, the roof plan.
Okay.
So in terms of privacy, what we did was we pulled the roof decks back from blocks 3 so that the western portion of the unit actually is not a roof deck, it's just a roof. And there'll be a 3.5 foot barrier between that stairwell and the next stairwell. So the roof deck function is actually to the east, so it's not really looking to the west anymore. So I think the only thing we'd have to look at is how to address the units that are south facing, for example, and then perhaps the westerly unit of block 4. But I think we take the same strategy to figure out methods of pulling the roof deck away, so you're not actually, you'd have to look over the edge of the roof rather than coming right to the edge of that. So I think we can do that quite easily.
Okay, thank you. And next comment says the shadow report shows an attention to detail that respects existing owners. So I think it's just a comment. There's a comment, we need affordable housing and green spaces in White Rock, and this fits with neither. Did you want to speak to your target market and perhaps any comments on affordability?
Hello everyone, this is Michael from my home, and speaking of the affordability, well, like apartment is more affordable for sure because it's given the scale of the unit size, right? But for townhomes, it's a relatively bigger unit. However, like we are targeting family, like with a larger, like more family members, families. And well, it's relatively early to talk about the price, but however, like we think there is certain demand in White Rock and the survey for townhome projects, and that's why we want to move forward for these projects. And well, it's gonna be, well, we anticipate this is gonna be a lengthy application process. So eventually, I think we're gonna come up with a better idea, like how to strategize this project and marketing this project. But bottom line, we're always looking forward to create something affordable to neighborhood, to community, and that has always been our goal for our company. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and maybe just I'll add, and if the architect team wants to elaborate, please. But one of the things that city staff are looking at is the bedroom count within each unit, and it looks as though all but one of the units are 3-bedroom units, and so there's a comment here. This will suit families with children and pets perhaps better than the previous proposal. Did you want to, Brian or anyone from the architect team, want to speak to the intended purchaser potentially of these units, or who your target market is?
Certainly these will be great for starting families that can almost, I wouldn't call it aging in place, but certainly the kids can grow up in there. You know, having 3 bedrooms is certainly helpful for a growing family, and usable space, in particular a secure deck on the top. The projects that we did in the past were young families, and they were ecstatic of the fact that they could have an outdoor space that they can put their children and have fun, but they don't necessarily have to supervise them 100% of the time. Whereas if it was green space on the ground floor, you know, they want to be able to be out there with the kids to watch them. So it provides some flexibility for the families as well. Side-by-side garages are certainly a lot more conducive to families. The cars can come and go quite a bit easier than tandem units. We've done tandem units in the past, and it's always a logistical issue with cars coming and going. So side-by-side garages tend to work better for growing families.
Thank you, Brian. I do see some other related or comments that are related to parking. So can you speak to, I see there's a question here, are they double car garages for all units? Yes. Do you want to speak? And I don't know if that's in your presentation, that you have a page you want to refer me to, but maybe you can just speak to it in the site plan that you have here.
It's on DP 0.0. There's a note in the comparison between the 2 projects. One back, I think it just keeps skipping over it. It's the next sheet, actually. There you go. It'll say 23 townhouse units, all side-by-side garages.
Okay, and just for the benefit of the audience, we have, you can see the drive aisles in the design with the 2-car garage accessed off of the drive aisle with the landscaping treatment off of those drive aisles, where there'd be more of a traditional front entry to the units.
And the unit sizes are around 1,421 square feet average. So it gives you an idea of the size of the home.
Okay, and I just we actually had that question, so I just published that comment as well. There's a concern about the lack of green space, the only green space being in the back corner. Did perhaps yourself, the architect team, or Travis from the landscape architecture firm want to speak to the green space that's proposed?
Sure, yeah. It's, I mean, with townhouses, let's see, where's the landscape plan? Here it is. So, yeah, with most townhouse projects, there's not a huge amount of green space involved, but we've tried to create a well-connected neighborhood component here. So you have nice, safe walkways, and there's spaces for kids to play hockey and things like that on these roads, which won't be getting much traffic. We did place the green space in the north corner away from traffic, so we feel that that's the safest and the quietest and the best oriented to the sun. So we did optimize that location for the outdoor space and think that it'll be a very comfortable space for meeting. There are parks in the neighborhood only blocks away, like McCod Park and others, and so when people want to go to something more significant, they can just walk down the street. But as was mentioned, the rooftop amenity is a significant sort of outdoor patio, which is, it's becoming more common, but it's fairly new in Canada, and it's a great outdoor space that people can plant themselves and do their own little urban gardens and have trees and potted plants and spend their time up there. And so, whereas in a lot of projects, if you are ground oriented or you just have a balcony, you're kind of limited to that orientation that you've chosen in all of these units. Each person kind of gets the full sun orientation and a nice outdoor space, and so that's a major benefit of this design.
Thanks, Travis. I'm just reading the comments as we have them here to see if there are any other comments related to landscaping. I don't see any at the moment, but we may go back. Garbage. So a couple of questions about where is garbage going and how is garbage going to be managed?
I was just going to answer that because I thought we may have missed that question. The intent would be a private garbage pickup service, and the garbage cans would be brought out, and the recycling boxes would be brought out onto the little driveway apron. There's a bit of an apron between the Stayte Road and the unit itself, and it'd be just brought out there to be picked up. There's no centralized garbage enclosure area per se.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to publish a few just comments, and certainly if you wish to respond, you can. I'll leave it with you. The comment, I believe the property, if the zoning is changed, should be duplexes to match the properties to the west. Comment, happy to see the developer listening to the community surrounding and responding to height and density concerns of community. Hope other developers in White Rock continue to do this. A similar comment about not living in the neighborhood, but good to hear the developers encouraged to come up with a plan that is better suited to the neighborhood, good for City Hall, mayor, councillors, and the developer. White Rock needs more townhome projects. So those are just general comments, and certainly turn it over to your team, Brian, if you wanted to add any sort of comments to those general comments, or I can keep going on the questions.
I think there was something about electric car charges. I think it's a possibility of adding kind of a level 2 charging area within the garage for a car spot. It's not too difficult to do that, and typically they work off of the house current, and once they buy the actual charging unit, they can plug it in and run the wires back to the electrical panel. So we can account for a level 2 charging station.
Okay, I just published that comment regarding the availability of electric vehicle parking or charging. Comment about just in the theme of parking. There are only 3 parking spaces on Stayte Road. They're usually taken. The proposal adds 3 visitor spots. So what if one unit has a family gathering? Where do all the other visitors park?
Well, there wasn't really any requirement for visitor parking, so we put in 3 spots. They are side-by-side parking within the actual units. Quite frankly, a lot of the units will probably only have 1 car, so there'll be at least 1 visitor within the garage as well. So, yeah, that's what we've done in this case.
And I would just add, the zoning bylaw standards do require for townhomes 2 spaces per unit, which each unit is able to accommodate here. And the bylaw doesn't actually have a requirement for visitor parking, as the architect team has mentioned there from Brian. So they are exceeding the minimum parking standards required by the city. There's a question about at what point the average natural grade was taken, and just for reference to those that may not be overly familiar with that reference. So yeah. Average natural grade is used in the measurement of building height. Mm-hmm. So it's based on the existing grade at all sort of 4 sides of the building prior to any alteration of the site having taken place. So the architects have a topographic survey of the property, and city staff will be working with the architects to define maximum building height based on an average natural grade. I believe right now, some of the heights, I think, Brian, you had mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the heights have been defined on the basis of the low point, is I believe what you said at the beginning. We will want to make sure that we are defining maximum height based on the average natural grade as defined in the city's zoning bylaw. So to the commenter, that's something that we'll be explicitly defining as we continue our review.
There's another question about the 3 stories, or a comment made about 3 stories with the roof deck walls being almost 4 stories. Just a comment to that is a lot of townhomes you'll see that are 3 stories will have a pitched roof on top, so the building form is quite a bit higher. In this case, we proposed a flat roof arrangement, and that actually reduces the massing of the building quite a bit.
Okay, I'm just publishing some comments about, again, just sort of, they're just comments offering support for some of the previous things that we've been discussing. Do the units have basements?
No. No, there's no basements here.
There are a couple comments. I'll publish them, and I think maybe I can start with a response. And if you wanted to add, Brian, you're welcome to. But comment: affordability is yet to be defined by the City of White Rock. So, what is considered "quote-unquote" affordable? As far as affordable housing goes, there are several projects closer to the town center that include those. Several hundred units will be available if projects are passed. I will say, just as a staff rep on the city's housing advisory committee, that we are looking at explicitly defining affordable housing. I think it's important to sort of acknowledge that affordability sort of falls on a spectrum. What's affordable for a household that's earning $50,000 is different than a household that's earning $150,000. So convention is that no more than 30% of the household income is directed to cover housing related costs, which might be a mortgage and electrical bills and so on. So we are actively working on trying to define affordability, and I think doing so on a spectrum. Next comment: the condos on the north side of the condo building to the south of this proposal are quiet. How will the project affect the, I guess, the level of noise within the neighborhood? I think we've got a couple similar comments. And actually, Brian, I would just ask, I don't know if you're publishing comments, but if you could allow me to publish the comments so that I can ensure we're responding to everyone. I don't know what I think you've probably just published about 10 comments. Okay. Could you ensure you're responding to all those?
You mean in written form?
No, we're getting comments coming in. I don't know if someone on your team is publishing those comments, but I want to just make sure we're providing an adequate response to everyone. I'll just make sure that we haven't missed any, but.
Yeah, I've just been verbally commenting to each of the ones that are listed.
Okay.
Let's just go. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. The condos to the north side, in terms of noise. If you remember the previous building, it was an L-shaped one, so there's quite a large open courtyard space that was facing kind of the southwesterly direction, but it was open to the south as well. It was accessible to the entire building, 50 units. There were also 2 units times by the number of floors facing the south property. In this case, we've only got three townhouse units facing that side, and really the only operable or the only outside area is the roof deck portion of those 3 units. There's no intended play areas there at all. There's no parking there other than the visitor parking spots of 3 spots. So I think it's actually probably quieter than the condo building.
Okay, thank you. Just a question about with 2-car garages, there may be a possibility of 46 cars from the townhouse. Were any studies done to look at traffic onto Stayte Road or 160 Street? Do you want to speak to the traffic assessment?
Yeah, there was a traffic assessment done originally for the condo building of 50 units, and can't remember how many parking spots that was, but it was quite a bit more than what we're proposing now. So it's actually, this townhouse development will have fewer car trips per hour than the condo building.
Okay, just to add, a traffic study was submitted with the application, and the traffic study looks at the level of traffic that would be generated by a project and the impact that that would have on what's referred to as a level of service at the intersections, both stop signs, sort of indicated intersections, and signalized intersections. And so the traffic study does conclude that there would be no detrimental impact from this project on the existing level of service and the future level of service of all nearby intersections.
I should also point out that the site access point is still to the north of the site, as opposed to, I think, one of the original versions way back on the condo scheme, there was an access point to the south, and the project to the south had issues with the noise and the amount of traffic generated next to their crossing. So it was proposed that our crossing would be towards the north, and we maintain that.
Okay, thank you. Landscaping plan and existing trees near or on the property line. Are there coniferous trees on or near the property line? What's the setback for the root protection system? And Travis, I know an arborist report was submitted with the application, so I don't know if you want to speak to what the city's private tree management bylaw captured in that report, or if that's been aligned with your work. And maybe not to put you on the spot too much, but I know an arborist report has been submitted and it has identified a lot of poplar trees on the property, and there will be some replacements required, and so city staff are looking right now at that. But I don't know, Travis, you want to speak more to the planting program that you're presenting in the landscape plan?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I was misinterpreting that too. I was thinking it was asking about what we were planning to plant, and we are planning to plant some trees along the south is where we get the closest to the property line. That's a shore pine, so it's an evergreen tree, so it'll provide a continuous year-round green buffer. But being a pine tree, it's a bit easier to manage and keep sort of not too overbearing. So that's what we're doing along the south property line. We have some magnolia trees. Those are the more purpley trees, and those are a smaller tree and typically farther from the property lines. And then the other trees that we're proposing are also farther away. So there shouldn't be too much concern about space. I think we have enough space for the trees here. I'll take a closer look to see what I have about the existing or neighboring offsite trees. I think generally, I mean, the trees on site, none of them can be retained in this situation. And so our goal is to provide trees that work best in this scenario to grow and mature with the site. But I'll just see what I have here about neighboring trees. I mean, typically we provide oversight on any neighboring trees to ensure that the development can take place without injuring them. But let me see if I can find something.
Sure, and maybe just while you're looking, and I can probably bring it up if the commenter wishes, but in the arborist report, there are a number of off-site protected trees along the southern boundary of the property. So I'll just, hopefully you can see my cursor there. In that location, immediately south of the property, there are a number of off-site trees that are protected by the city's tree protection bylaw. And the arborist report is saying that those trees would be preserved within the design of the project. I think I made the mistake of saying they were popular trees. They're actually cottonwood trees within the majority of the property today, which are recognized within the city's tree management bylaw as lower value trees. So they don't have as much of a requirement for replacement or compensation. That being said, there are a number of offsite trees that would not be impacted by the design as proposed. Question is the electrical box for the units in the front of the building.
Sorry, what was that again?
Is the electrical box for the building in the front?
Yeah, there's a proposed PMT location on the southeast corner.
Yeah, I think it's referring to the units. I don't know if it's meant the electrical, maybe an electrical outlet for the units.
There's electrical closets. When you have more than 4 units, you need an electrical closet. So you can see a small rectangle that's on the side of each building. You can see, let's say, for example, the building to the north, you'll see it on the left side or the west side. Okay. You can see kind of a white area. That's actually the electrical closet. Okay. And but the main feed onto the site is the PMT, the Pavon transformer, and that's located on the southeast corner.
Okay, thank you. I think there's probably some follow-up questions on trees, so I just want to make sure we're addressing those in the context. Would the huge, beautiful trees over 40 feet tall on the condo property, north property line, be safe? So I believe they're referring to the trees here. It's the southern property line, but the north property line of the condo to the south. Maybe just not to speak for the applicant, and by all means, Brian, I don't believe you have the arborist with you, but the arborist report is being reviewed by the city's arboricultural technician, and I can sort of take note of that and make sure that we're ensuring that the construction as proposed would not sort of compromise the integrity of those trees.
I mean, I'm looking at the plan right now, and there's 10 trees there, and they're all proposed to be saved from the southwest corner. Most of the trees are on that back sort of leg there, and then there's one tree in the inside corner there, and there's one tree right near the front southeast corner. So it's a mix of trees from paperbark maple to Persian ironwood, western red cedar, a number of black pines. About half are black pines. There's a western red cedar, a nori maple, and cedar hedge. So those are proposed to be retained, and some of them do have branching of the drip line. It does cross over the property line, but most of that is also within what's our green space in that little green hedge buffer or in that yard where beyond the parking space there. So yeah, we believe it's very possible to sensitively build adjacent those trees.
I think it's also beneficial that we didn't have a basement in these units below the garage slab, because then the excavation would probably hit the root ball of those trees. So we're on the surface in this case, so it shouldn't be that issue.
I'm going to try the next comment is there's a request to see the elevation drawings again. I can throw it on the screen if the commenter has a specific question regarding the elevation drawings. I'll try to find it first, and maybe we can get a follow-up question there if there's. I'll just, in the meantime, I'll publish some of the general comments that are being raised, reference to the pine trees. There's a comment, I think, the developer should increase the setback on the west side for fire separation. Did you want to speak to that at all, Brian?
West side for fire separation. Well, typically any setback that's less than 5 feet would become an issue in terms of sprinklering and non-combustible finishes. In this case, we're still using non-combustible finishes, but we're set back quite a bit further than that. So I'm not sure what more setback you need. I mean, it's already pulled back. It's even pulled back further than the required building setback line.
Yeah, and just for the commenter on that particular question, the city's building officials and fire department will also be reviewing this application to make sure that the fire code and BC building code requirements for fire separation are being met. So those things are being looked at as part of the internal technical review. There was.
Well, I was just going to mention that on the setback lines, we do a limiting distance calculation. So each of the openings, a garage door, a door, windows, we considered unprotected openings, and they're allowed to be a certain percentage of those on the building elevation. And we would do those calculations for the building permit application as well to make sure we conform.
Okay, thank you. I see a follow-up comment about, I think it was the grades. I don't know if, I think that was the one there. So I'm going to publish the comment, and still, if the commenter would add what it is that they would like us to just speak to in terms of the elevation, or as maybe it was just seeing the elevation. There is a related comment about the official community plan speaking to the design being done with regard to the topography. So maybe while we have this slide on the screen, if Brian, you wish to speak to the way that you've looked at the design, the contours of the property, and preparing your layout.
We've pretty much followed grade for this proposed scheme. Rather than, I think in the original condo scheme, due to the concerns of the neighborhood, we actually flattened the site out, which meant that we were cutting into the soil and I guess it would be the northwest corner. We actually have retaining walls along that side. But in the townhouse scheme, we're trying to follow the existing grade as much as possible. The areas between block 3 and 2 are where we're making up some of the grade differential. So you'll see the stairs that lead to the central pathway.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're responding to the follow-up questions that we're getting as we go here.
I think that one question, consideration about incorporating natural topography, is exactly what we did. We're trying to follow the natural topography of that site rather than cutting into the site, doing a cut or fill or anything like that.
Thanks, Brian. I'm just going to publish a couple, again, more comments regarding comment regarding affordable housing, and I think I'm reading it to sort of suggest that there's a need for intervention if the public would like to see affordable being non-market housing provided to the market. Concerned about, I think, the number of people being crammed into the small property. The suggestion to make the units 2-story and bigger with less auto orientation, more treed space, open space. Again, I think it's a comment. You're welcome, obviously, to respond to it if you'd like.
I think going to a 2-story, that's they'd obviously be larger footprints and I think even less affordable. trying to getting a unit that's around 1,420 odd square feet. It's still affordable relative to larger townhouse or single family homes, and that's the target market here. So you have young families that can age in place. That was the intent of that.
Thank you. Question about whether or not, I think along the same sort of line of comments, is it possible to lower the height of the western block, the westernmost block?
I think to do that, we'd have to look at cutting more of the site out. So it goes back to the whole issue of respecting the topography of the site. We'd have to kind of forego that and dig the site out and retain the northern portion along the west property line and the westerly portion of the north property line, and basically cut all of that down. So you would see block 3 drop down close to the elevation of block 2, and then you would have a retaining wall close to the westerly property line.
A couple of questions or comments I can take. A question about the cottonwood trees are dangerous. Why are you not removing them? I believe all the cottonwood trees are proposed for removal. And then another comment, the city arborist, perhaps it's directed to the city arborist, but if residents want to hire their own arborist to contest and challenge the submission, can they do so, and can the public receive a copy of the arborist report? So I had on the screen there earlier my email. It's gnewman@whiterockcity.ca. I'll have it on the screen as we start to wrap up a bit later. Certainly, if you would like a copy of the arborist report, let me know, and I can provide you a copy if you wanted to review it. We do have qualified certified arborist retained by the city, employed by the city, that is doing the review, but I wouldn't want the public to go to an expense if they don't need to, but you're certainly welcome. Going back up to the top, what type of heating system will these have? Any air conditioning available?
That hasn't gotten into the discussion yet. Usually we'll do that during the design development stage, moving into working drawings, discussing whether it's all electric or natural gas or radiant systems. We have in the past for townhouse projects incorporated air conditioning, so you see a condensing unit on the outside in the patio area, and all of the levels are air conditioned. You haven't gotten into that. Typically, you'll see a heat recovery system at the very least in terms of energy efficiency. But once you put that system, it's not that expensive to add the air conditioning component to it.
Okay. There's a comment just wanting to make sure that all the comments being received are transcribed or collected. Just for the audience. We do have a transcript that's published by Microsoft Teams coming out of the event, so all the comments that we're receiving are being sort of documented verbatim. So we will have that sort of available as part of the public record. Just again, a concern voiced about the noise. I do apologize, Brian. I think I might have sort of suggested that you were publishing comments, but it may actually be that people are withdrawing their comments as they're being received. Comment about we should be getting an updated traffic study. So the traffic study that we have with this application is specific to the 23 townhomes proposed. So it has been sort of updated to ensure it was speaking to the traffic volumes that would be generated by this project. What are those narrow units with bifold doors? We did speak to those briefly, just that it is, I think you're referring to these in that comment. Those are the electrical meters. Is that correct, Brian?
That's right. And they're only accessed when there has to be work by hydro.
Okay. Travis, just to mix it up a bit, do you have, can you give us a description of how the rooftop space would be programmed? There's a question of will any trees, shrubs, or flowers be allowed on the rooftop decks?
Yes, so We're not programming the rooftops specifically as part of this application. The idea is that each owner has their own rooftop and they can do what they want with it. However, I mean, it will be open to having planters, so they would be unconnected planters, and this is a wood frame building, so fairly small planters to hold either small trees or shrubs or gardening types of raised planters. Those could all be situated on the rooftops, and so yeah, that'd be encouraged, and we expect people will do that.
Okay. The city wouldn't prohibit any planting on the rooftop, although I think we would want to make sure that people aren't planting trees. I don't know that it would be feasible, but it's something we can look at as we move forward. There's a question about combustible building. Would there be sprinkler systems in the design?
Typically, we'll make them conform to the local building bylaw as well as the building code. We haven't actually even done a code analysis on this and gone through the building bylaw. For example, if the White Rock building bylaw requires sprinkler, it would be sprinklered anyways.
Okay, and just for the commenter as well, that is something that the city is currently looking at with the the stair towers at the top, and whether or not that results in this being classified as a 4-story building, which would have some building code implications. So that's something that we're looking into, and we'll be working with the architect to resolve if it is an issue.
We've gone through that in other municipalities, and it's been construed as not a story as long as it's just for exiting purposes off the roof. So in other words, you can't have additional storage space or habitable indoor space attached to it. Then it would definitely be construed as a story, and then it moves it into a different part of the code, and you'd be looking at alternative solutions for fire protection.
Okay, there's sort of a similar comment I just published about the potential for fire spread. I did mention that we will be looking at compliance with the fire code and the BC building code in terms of separation, so that's something that the city will be looking at with the design. On the topic of setbacks, Brian, do you want to just clarify what the minimum setbacks are from all property lines?
I'd like to be able to read the drawing, but my eyes are so bad.
Probably be best to go to 0, for the main site plan.
Just bear with me for a second here.
Sure, and I didn't mean to throw you on the spot there. So it's about 14 feet from the north, 4.5 meters. 9 feet 10 inches on the south, so 3.5 meters. There's a 6 meter minimum setback on the west, and then on the east is a 3.5 meter setback from the property line as it exists today. The city is looking at a 2 meter wide statutory right-of-way to allow for the future programming of Stayte Road. There is a desire over the longer term to have a multi-use path for cyclists on Stayte Road. So the city is looking at a statutory right-of-way or potentially a land dedication along Stayte Road. Comment about the storage of, I think, flammable materials in the garage, maybe just being a comment of expressing concern. Question, has the builder contractor been chosen?
Not yet, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Should also point out that there's a 1 hour fire separation between 2 units, each of the units. So the demising wall between the units is fire rated.
Just a question to clarify, the proposal suggests that young families will have 1,400 plus square feet. Is it a 2 or 3 bedroom unit? So I guess 1,400 square foot reference.
Yeah, it's 3 bedrooms.
Question I think directed at city staff: has the application been reviewed by the advisory design panel? The answer is no. That would be the next step in this process, would be that we would continue our internal review and work with the applicant to have it in a state that's ready to be presented to the advisory design panel, but that would be the next step. Because there is a major development permit that relates to the form and character of the project, we would be presenting this application to the advisory design panel in the new year. I'm just publishing some comments about concerns with parking, if there were visitors and where they would need to park. Question, are you maybe just as I wrap my head around some of the other comments here, Travis, perhaps a question for you. Are you able to plant the trees on the west side of the property? It might be for your team as well, Brian, to provide some buffering?
In the current state of the design, we're not able to plant trees along most of the property line. We do have 2 trees planted in the north amenity space, but it's very narrow. But there is an existing hedge there along the entire property line, which we plan to keep intact, which provides a visual buffer between the 2 units, or the two sites.
Okay, a comment just about the lack of green space in the neighborhood overall, and there being a desire, the comments directed to the city of White Rock, a desire to potentially see the city purchase. I'm not sure if the reference is this property or the property to the northeast for a potential dog park and I think public recreation space. Question about if the applicant can see the east elevation showing the west block. Do you have that in your package here, Brian?
East elevation, the west block. I don't think it was in this. It was in the original DP package. There we go. Well, it's block 1, right? Yeah. Did you say it was east elevation of block? East
elevation showing the west.
I think the one facing the duplexes.
Sorry, Greg, it was the east elevation, which building block?
The question is, can they see the east elevation showing the west block?
So that would be internal between blocks 2 and 3?
Yeah, that's what I'm understanding. I guess would be, yeah, the internal. I don't believe we have it in your package here. Just if the commenter can bear with me, I'll try to see if I can.
Yeah, it would be on, in the DP package, it would be drawing DP 3.3.
Okay, so here it is, just for the public. It didn't come with a specific question, so I don't know if the commenter has a question, but that's the internal. So I don't know if you want to speak to the facade design within that
that's
west elevation. So here's the east elevation of block 3.
So you would see the stair entry point at the lowest level and a kind of an entry porch with a patio and a deck area above, and basically masses that way. And it's a 3-story element with the 4-story, the raised portion for the stairwell on the roof. You can see it in the distance with the trellis element.
Okay, thank you. Would the owners be allowed barbecues on the rooftop?
Yeah, I don't think there's a restriction for that. And I think the intent was to be able to use it as an outdoor family space for the unit.
Yeah, okay. There was a submission received, and I know members of the public that were involved in preparing the submission are in the digital room tonight. I wonder if you wanted to speak to the layout as it relates to a potential east-west orientation of the mid units. I know, maybe I can find the site plan just to present it to you. I think it would be worthwhile to respond to this, just knowing that it's come up.
I think we saw a sketched layout showing blocks, in fact, blocks 2 and 3 oriented in east-west direction, but in order to accommodate that, it would be a resultant loss, I think, about 3 units. I think it was a 20-unit scheme, so the developer's gone from 50 units all the way down to 23 currently, and I think losing 3 more would be detrimental to the project.
Okay, thank you. Question, can the public get a copy of the presentation PDF?
Yeah,
happy to. As I mentioned, tonight's presentation is being recorded, so it will be available. But if the applicant is comfortable sharing it, I'm happy to provide it.
we can send you a PDF of the this package.
Okay. So yes. What would the anticipated completion date be if the city approves this? And maybe that's if you wanted to perhaps give a rough sense of the timing post approval.
Yeah, certainly. We'd have to, even if we made it all the way through the rezoning and development permit stage, we'd still have to prepare building permit drawings, which usually takes about, we would say, about 2.5 months, give or take, and then we'd have to submit for building permit. And so the building permit approval process can be, say 6-7 months or something like that. And we'd have to have a contractor price it out. That usually takes about a month and a bit. And then we would be able to issue a contract for them to start construction. And depending on the phasing of this thing, it could take, a couple of years to build the blocks out. If the market was healthy, then they can literally be built out in the same time. We've had projects that are multi-block buildings be built out literally all in one shot rather than phasing. But it really depends on where the market is at the time.
Question about, would the individual decks negate the fire separation requirements, especially with the use of individual barbecues? Does the fire separation continue up past the roof line due to individual decks being used on common area of the roof?
Typically not. There's usually a fence line between the patios, and I think the only non-combustible portions would be the actual finishes on the wall assemblies. There's an upstand around the patio, the roof deck, as well as the actual stair projection. That would have cementitious board siding on it, which is non-combustible. Okay, there's a question, can you show block 4? So I'll just go over to block 4, which is the northern block. I'm not sure, again, if the commenter has something specific that they would like us to speak to. This is, hopefully you can see that. Second floor, first floor, so you can see the parking and the garage. Ground floor, and then second floor. I think that might be mislabeled. This is the second floor, and then the rooftop. Yeah. And then these are the elevations. So this is the elevation. So I think there may be interest in the way that the building is interfacing with the north elevation. So it's a similar design, I believe, Brian, to what we were illustrating in block 3. I think it also kind of shows how we're working with the topography of the site. There is a gradual slope up to the northwest corner, so we are stepping the building where needed, rather than trying to dig the site out to accommodate the building floor plate. We've actually stepped the building in a couple of spots. Comments about the 4th floor coming in. So I'm just publishing 3 related comments. So concern about 4 stories being too tall. Looking again, I guess, at the feasibility of a 2-story design with the rooftop space. Can you speak to that? Sorry.
There's just been some comments about the height, I guess, and
Right.
maybe if you were to drop a story, what would the implications be?
You have to basically combine the bedrooms with all the living spaces, the kitchen, dining, and living into one floor plate, which would be, I don't know, you'd end up having a one-bedroom apartment, basically.
Okay. Just for those that are still joining us, I've got one more question just about will the project be engineered before it's presented to the advisory design panel. I'm not sure if the commenter is speaking to being reviewed by on the structural engineering side or civil engineering, but Brian, are you able to speak to the level of structural engineering that has been part of the design up until this point? It has been the topic of discussion at the advisory design panel in the past.
Certainly not. I mean, we've designed and had constructed a number of townhouse developments over the years, and we have a bunch of them under construction as well. So we have a pretty good idea of what's needed structurally, and the structural engineer gets involved at the what we call the design development phase. It's between the development permit period and the building permit side. So before the consultants actually start physical work and drawing, we have them look at a schematic plan of what's involved, and we've anticipated a lot of things, but they usually confirm it in the process. These units are not unfamiliar to us in the sense that we've done things like this before, so it's pretty easy for us to refer to the previous projects.
Thank you. Not seeing any new questions. We'll maybe wait for a minute if anyone that's with us has any additional comments or questions you'd like us to respond to, and I'll then jump into just a summary of next steps and how you can be engaged in the project as it moves forward. So we'll just wait a little bit just to make sure that there are no other questions, and then we'll proceed. Another comment, just a concern, I think, from a marketing perspective, you talked about the use of roof decks as specific space for owners. Currently, there's no bylaw against barbecue use. Developer indicates no firewall on the rooftop between the suites. Are there sprinklers to prevent fires on the roof and perhaps being spread?
No, I think just going back to the one that we did previously in the city of Langley, I believe the underside of the roof structure, which is the underside of the roof deck, has got rated drywall on it, so there's a separation there as well. In that particular municipality, they did require sprinklers for all developments in the municipality. We'd have to take that into consideration here if it's required by the building bylaw.
Thank you. Question, how large is the fourth floor structure? Are you able to speak to the stair tower and its dimensions?
Typically the stairwells are 3 feet wide for each flight, so it's 6 feet plus a wall assembly. And let's say the wall assembly with the cavity system would be, say, 7 inches aside. So 7 feet, 4, 5, something like that.
And how long are they, Brian?
I think probably about, let me see, about 12 feet. It's what you use 4, so 12 feet 6 approximately.
Okay, thank you. I think you've spoken to this comment just about the feasibility of the project if you're having to lose units, but just a question of if it's feasible at 20 units.
Getting a lot of head shakes here, so I suspect not. This project has gone from a 50-unit condominium building down to 23 townhouses. That's a pretty substantial change, and you know, not necessarily a negative change for the effect of this project to the neighborhood, but certainly a negative impact on the developer side. So they're still at the table, still trying to make this thing work. So I think 23 units is it's a reasonable compromise from where it was before.
Thank you. I think there's some recurring comments about fire. There's stair towers opening up onto the rooftop. What prevents fire on these single exit rooftops? I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah, the single exit is the exit requirements are based on square footage and occupant load. In this case, it's it's an individual unit for a family in there. So the occupant load in the area that we're exiting from is small enough that you're allowed a single exit. The stairwell itself has actually got a non-combustible finish all the way around. There'll be an insulated metal door to access the stairwell as well. So in that sense, it's non-combustible. Yes, it's wood frame inside, but the wood frame is wedged in between drywall on one side and non-combustible finish on the other.
Thank you. Just on the topic of the stair towers, stairwells, do they have to be so imposing on the rooftop?
Well, there is a possibility that we could add some glazing, which would help reduce the visual mass of the stairwells. In terms of the length of the stairwell and the width, it's governed by the building code in terms of the stair tread and rise requirements. So we're not proposing anything like a grand staircase. It's certainly a minimal requirement under code. But again, we could add some glazing in there to lighten the mass up a little bit.
Okay, thank you. A question about whether or not there would be traffic softeners around the site, and I think that may be referring to things like speed humps on Stayte Road. I'll just say from my review of the traffic impact study, there were no recommended improvements to the road network, so the volume of traffic that this project would generate was not expected to have any measurable impact on existing traffic flows, and in addition to forecasted future traffic flows. There is no need for example, for signalization of any existing either stop sign indicated intersections or say left turn or right turn, dedicated right turn lanes, or left turn signalization of existing signalized intersections. So there was nothing in the traffic study, and the city doesn't have any intention at this point anyway, coming out of this project, to do any traffic softeners to Stayte Road as a result of the project.
We could just throw in a comment here. We could look at, there's a decorative paving section at the crossing, just west of the property line on the east side where the crossing is located. We could propose that portion to be raised a little bit, so it's like a method to slow people down, and by putting a stop sign there so that anybody leaving the site is going to slow down, hit that bump, stop, and then move on before they cross the municipal sidewalk and get onto the street itself. So that could be I wouldn't call it a traffic calming mechanism, but certainly improve the chances of people paying attention to where they're coming off the site.
A question about what the total area of the property is. I'll have it as 3,163 square meters with 34,000 square feet.
Yeah. 34,000.
Okay, happy to take any other comments or questions before we wrap up. What I'll do is I'll start the overview of kind of next steps, and if we do get questions as we wrap up here, we're happy to take any last minute questions that you have. Just for ease of access as well, as I mentioned, if you wanted to send me an email direct if there's anything that you would like to get access to in terms of some of the technical submission materials, a copy of the presentation, let me know. My email is on the screen there. Also, if you have not yet completed a feedback form, please go to the City of White Rock's events calendar and find the December 9th calendar details, and within there there's a digital feedback form that we would appreciate getting your feedback on. We will be reporting I guess in terms of next steps, we'll be taking the feedback received tonight. There have been some suggestions for things that we might pursue through some design changes and some site alterations, so that those we'll review those further with the applicant. You don't see it on the screen here, but the application is subject to the advisory design panel, was discussed earlier. So that would be the next step, would be, because there's a major development permit, would be to prepare and present the application to the ADP. So that would follow before we prepare zoning bylaws for first and second reading, and a draft development permit for review by the Land Use and Planning Committee. If the Land Use and Planning Committee recommends that Council give a bylaw, which would be an amending zoning bylaw to introduce the comprehensive development zone, if it's supported by the Land Use Planning Committee and Council gives first and second reading to the zoning bylaw, we would have a statutory public hearing. So all landowners and occupants within 100 meters of the property would receive notice of the public hearing. We'd also publish 2 consecutive ads in the Peace Arch News. And that would be the opportunity for those wanting to provide their comments to do so direct to Council. With COVID being what it is, all future public hearings will be held digitally. So we're currently in the process of working out what that looks like. It would likely be a Microsoft Teams meeting where you're able to join either digitally by your computer or tablet or your smartphone. And through your application, you're able to speak direct to Council, or there'd also be a phone-in option with some pre-registration. So we're working out those details as we speak. And so as we move private applications forward to a public hearing, we would be holding those fully digitally at this point. Following the outcome of the public hearing, there's an opportunity for Council to give the zoning amendment bylaw third reading. Third reading often comes with conditions. That may be things like executing covenants on title, executing the detailed civil engineering. It's called a works and servicing agreement, to make sure that we get, for example, securities to support the improvements along Stayte Road. So we may be looking at, as I mentioned earlier, a multi-use path and some sidewalk widening, that sort of thing. So that would all be captured within the civil engineering works and legal agreements to ensure they're implemented. And then lastly, once all of the conditions of third reading are addressed, we would finalize a bylaw and the development permit for final approval by Council. At this point, it's probably February or March would be the earliest that we're able to get this file on the advisory design panel meeting. And then it would just be a matter of how quickly we're able to address all the technical issues and the public feedback that we've received before we would bring bylaws forward to Council. So before we close, I see we have a couple more comments. Suggestion for a minor or mirror and a speed bump just prior to exiting the complex onto Stayte Road, as many kids use the walkway going to school. So I think that's something we will make note of. And there was a comment earlier, I mentioned that all the comments that we're receiving are being saved within Microsoft Teams. We'll be providing to the applicants a transcript of all the comments that we've received tonight. In addition, they'll have access to the recorded meetings. So part of our planning procedures bylaw requirements is a public information meeting summary. So the applicant will have to summarize all the feedback that they've received tonight, in addition to the feedback that we'll be providing through those completed feedback forms, and they'll have to acknowledge how they've responded to the comments. Just a comment, cutting the unit is properly. I'm not sure what that means. Should remove all 6 units from the west side. Again, just a comment. Front elevation of the rows of townhomes are architecturally immature, ticky-tacky, showing no imagination, similar to messes in Surrey. So that's something I think that we'll be working with the applicant on in terms of the design and breaking up the character of the buildings along the street is something that we'll be working on. Just it's a comment that's come out of the advisory design panel. We haven't had the benefit yet of working with the applicant on those details, so I think those are things that can probably be fairly easily addressed as we move forward. So we have about 5 more minutes. If there are any other questions, please feel free to let us know. And again, I just want to thank everyone for their time tonight. Making more green area to suit White Rock community. Brian, did you or anyone on your team have anything else that you wanted to kind of add in terms of closing tonight's meeting?
Well, I think we've pretty much covered everything. I think there was a lot of questions and comments, so hopefully we've been able to answer them to everybody's satisfaction. So, and of course, we're looking forward to working with the advisory design panel and staff to follow this design through.
Thank you. Just maybe while I have 4 minutes of our 10 attendees that are still in the room, just as a sidebar, and certainly happy to respond to any additional questions related to this project, but the city is currently embarking on a housing needs study. There were some comments earlier about the affordability of units and affordability needs in the community, so would love for people to go to the City of White Rock's webpage and on the search bar just type in housing, and right now we have an active housing needs survey. So if people haven't done it yet, would love to get your responses to that survey. It'll close in the early new year. We're close to 200 responses, which is great. I'd love to see us hit 200. Again, some comments about the financial viability of the project. I think you've responded to that, and that being something that we'll have to evaluate as you continue through the process. So I don't think it's fair to ask you to speak to a walkaway sort of unit count. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and please feel free to send me an email if you'd like additional information regarding next steps, and please do fill out the digital feedback forms before Christmas Day. And thanks, and I hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday season.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.